PJ Harvey, I Inside the Old I Dying, from the new album I Inside the Old You're Dying. It's coming out this week. A collaboration with a long-time musical friends Flood and John Parrish, accompanied by UK tour dates this September at the Barrowlands in Glasgow, Roundhouse in London and Manchester Albert Hall. And I was lucky enough to be in conversation with the people who made this album. And we can bring it to you now on BBC Six Music.
Lauren Laverne,
PJ Harvey, Flood, John Parrish, welcome to all of you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, it's a delight, as always, to see you. And also mob-handed now. All three
all three of us.
How many records is it you guys have done together now? I count 7, am I right?
I think that sounds about...
Yeah, I haven't counted them.
Yes. Yeah. Well, why would you separate them? Because then you're also doing kind of soundtrack work together and some projects, which is, you know, John, you and Polly and Flood, you know, you collaborated with Polly too. What is this moment like for you? I mean, a new record is about to be unleashed on the world. I'll ask you first, Polly. I Inside the Old You're Dying. It's out this week. What's that kind of edge of the diving board moment like?
I definitely feel it building towards the release date on Friday, and I find myself feeling quite sensitive. I think it's just that thing that you've worked on something for a number of years, and then slowly opened it out to share it with John and Flood, and then working on it again for another year or so, and it's just been so much in my world and in my mind for such a long time that when you actually let go of that, it's quite an odd feeling. It's not unpleasant. It's quite freeing in a way, but it's definitely a transformation that happens.
Yeah, is that magic kind of, you know, mixture of vulnerability and freedom, as you say. It's like falling or flying. I mean, in many ways, the new record picks up where last year's narrative poem, All I'm left off. Polly, I know that you didn't want to quite leave that sonic netherworld, I think you've described it as, behind. What was it about that kind of place that creatively kept you there?
As I was working on the book, there were definitely poems that meant a great deal emotionally. I felt in more of a universal way rather than just in terms of the book's story. I felt like they could become songs. So when I began to experiment with that, ended up with some demos that I just sung in an iPhone, which still I wasn't quite sure what they would become. And then when Flood and John and I shared ideas, I think we all felt that of the 14 songs I'd sung into an iPhone, maybe 6 might be strong, and we thought, okay, we might have a great EP, that'd be great. But I just knew there was the potential for songs in the poems, because songs and poems are quite different things. You know, poem has to do a lot of work on a blank page. It has to carry all its own music, has to create all of its emotion, just words on a page. So to put a poem into a lyric actually has to be quite a lot simpler, because the music does half of that for you. So it's actually better to have a very simplified lyric. So I knew that some of the poems, the more simple poems, had that quality to them that I thought could only be enhanced by bringing music in. So anyway, we set about thinking we might have an EP, and we're all quite surprised, I think.
Surprised and delighted, I mean, to have this album there. John, I might bring you in here if that's all right, because that narrative world that All I'm steeped in is you know, must be one that you understand as well. I mean, you know, you guys have been collaborating since Polly was 18, I think, known each other since way back, and that kind of aesthetic, that place, did you connect with it immediately?
Yeah, very much. You know, we're from the same part of the world, so I mean, I'm from about 5 miles away, so and I totally understood it and related to it. We sort of went into the studio not really with any idea of how the things were going to sound. You know, as Polly just said, the demos were sketches, and on the first day, none of the three of us had any idea what we were going to come out with. A sort of a world sort of quite quickly developed, which was which felt sort of totally related. The sonic world felt related to the lyrical world that Polly had.
Yeah, and it is this kind of netherworld that, you talked about, this idea of getting beneath the forest floor, dirt under your fingernails, and, full of magic and stories and lives. I mean, Flood, you nodded there and looked kind of delighted, and also kind of, I don't quite know what the expression on your face was there when John was saying we didn't know what we were going to come out with. I get the sense that's where you like to be, though.
Yes. Yeah, it's really exciting. And the demos being rough sketches, which is sometimes not been the way on some of the albums, it freed us up, all of us, to explore the difficult thing of getting a poem translated into a lyric and on a song, because a word written sounds very different to a word sung, and vice versa. You can get away with daylight murder.
I remember on day one coming into Flood's studio and seeing microphones just everywhere I looked. On the floor, on the ceiling, under the seat, behind that amp. I thought, what's going on? Because we hadn't talked about any approach. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of dawned on me that Flood was just thinking we were just going to start playing. And that immediately I felt a bit horrified. Because, I thought, well, we hadn't even talked about what we're doing. But so I thought, no, Polly, don't panic, just go with it. So we just started playing, and it just started happening. Mm-hmm. And I think, and Flood and John, I think, will back me up on this, but I think probably since Let England Shake now, I've been much more open to improvising in the moment with players on the floor and with the recording people, because before that, and Flood hinted at it then, but I used to be, when I was younger, I used to be so particular about wanting to keep songs exactly as I'd imagined them and exactly as I demoed them. Mm-hmm. And so I would shut down a lot of potential offers from the others in the room. And I think as I've got older, I've become more confident in just letting those edges relax a bit. And what I've realised is that the more you relax and let other people bring their ideas and just let it flow, that the better result you have. So I think this was a step on again, actually, because I think it started with Let England Shake, and then opened up again with Hope 6. But I think this was the most open I've felt with you both, and the most you were probably able to bring in.
I think we better hear some of the music now. So we've got a track to play from the new album. This is called Lonesome Tonight. Can you tell me anything about it before we hear it?
Oh, I was quite trepidatious about recording this one. For one, I found the finger picking really hard, and I tried to get someone else to play it, and it seemed to end up playing it myself very ham-fistedly. But John and I put it down together, so having John anchoring me on the drums kept me together and stopped me panicking when my fingers weren't working as I wanted them to. Am I right in thinking it was quite hard to get the singing right?
Yeah.
How did you nail it?
Well, there was a way that Polly was singing most of the songs that I'd never heard her sound like. So I spent a lot of time just sort of waiting for her to start singing and then stick a mic in front of her and go, just sing, Paul. And was this the one with a load of spill? I think there was a problem, a technical problem.
So spill is like where you're picking stuff up on a mic. That's not the thing that the mic is pointing at.
Yes, exactly. And so we spent a long time sort of working out how to do it. And in the end, Polly just sang it straight away, and it was fine. It was, I think we all got ourselves into a bit of a knot about the technicalities, and this proved that you don't need to worry about those things.
Let's do it. This is Lonesome Tonight, PJ Harvey.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Will you come back again?
PJ Harvey and Lonesome Tonight. Flood, I think Polly's likened your direction in the studio to being a little bit like a film director at times as well. That kind of bringing out different characters.
Yeah, he set the scene up, really, and then we just step in, but it's all set. And Flood records everything like all the time, don't you?
Because recording should be fun. It shouldn't be a pressure. And if everybody's sort of going, this is a bit unusual, or I haven't seen this, and we all know each other so well there's this element of respect, but also, what's going to happen? And it's not going to be bad. It's going to be something that will spur each one of us off. And the idea of setting up somewhere that is creative is paramount for anything. And this was just, Polly said, I've got a few sound effects. And maybe we could do something with that. And we got a bass out of a cow mooing. I don't
This
know.
is more pastoral than even I was imagining.
But it was the idea that anything could go.
Yeah.
You could do anything, and just freedom.
And I think that kind of homemade quality to the instrumentation was very important to you as well. I mean, John, maybe I could bring you in on that a little bit, this idea of kind of
All of
crafting.
John's gear is held together with bits of tape.
Right, so, I mean, you know...
I'm
I
held
was as
together with
old
bits of
as he
tape,
is. So this is this passion for the analogue and beyond is good.
Yeah,
Suits you.
I guess. I mean, I like kind of cranky sounds, and I like the organic feel of that, and obviously it felt suitable for the music that we were trying to make. But most of the stuff that was in the studio did look as though it had just been either pulled from a junk shop or was about to be sort of taken there and swapped for something else, something more useful. But but the feeling in the studio, because we've worked together for so many years, there's such a level of trust between the three of us that there's always that feeling that somebody's got your back at any time, so you can try any idea, no matter how.
Yeah.
No matter how ridiculous it might seem at the time.
That's important, actually. You don't feel embarrassed to try anything, and some of the ideas were terrible.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't matter. But so it's that freedom that actually brings out the goods,
And
I think.
I think you can only have that with years of experience,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said about getting older and becoming more confident, because you've been working on your art for such a long time, and you've found people that you trust.
Yeah. We just talked beforehand as well. It was really important to us to not tip into it just being what one would expect for the lyrical material. Like that, that lyrical material you'd expect to form some sort of folk band, have Morris dancers in the background. But we were
John
all,
was having
especially
none of
John, was like watching that all the time. So
It's like I hear
really-
jingling.
But I had, when I'd been writing Orlam, I'd collected a lot of natural sounds. Some I'd recorded myself, just streams or leaves in the wind. And then I've worked quite a lot in theatre with sound designers. So I had some friends that I just knew had libraries of those sorts of sounds. So I collected together everything that had some sort of reference to the lyrical material. And we talked about how can we use this that isn't predictable, that isn't just making like a natural world folk album. So we tried to make everything kind of unrecognisable, because that, and then as we began to experiment with that was what was exciting us. So when we were playing live in the room together, which is how every song started, none of us really knowing what we were doing, Flood playing as well, because Flood's never really joined in playing as much as he did on this record. So he would be there doing some sort of mysterious thing in the corner with something that looked like a telephone exchange. And then John and I would sort of switch instruments till we found what was feeling best. And then Cecil was taking these nature sounds but making them completely unrecognisable with various bits of equipment. So I think what started to happen was that John and I began to play with the atmosphere that Cecil was creating. So Cecil, like the way Flood had set the scene with the room and the microphones, and I think you hear that room on the whole of the recording, which is beautiful. That's such a Flood thing to do. But Cecil would set the atmosphere, because I felt like when he was playing all these strange noises, I felt like I entered a space, and I think John felt it too. In fact, I know he did, because I could feel him feeling it, because we were playing together. So we began to inhabit this sort of scene from the soundtrack we were making. And Flood kept conjuring it out of us, I felt, because what he was adding was often experimenting with what we were playing and then feeding it back to us. It was like this strange loop.
Polly, I want to ask you about something you mentioned earlier, which was the idea of drawing on different disciplines and art forms for inspiration. It's something that you've always done, and I think in the lead up to this album, the artist Steve McQueen gave you some really good advice. What happened? What did he say?
Well, John and I were on tour with the Hope 6 album, and we were in Chicago, and I've wanted to meet Steve for ages, and we've got a mutual friend in Michael Morris from Art Angel. I think I just happened to read somewhere that he was shooting in Chicago. So I contacted Michael and I said, is Steve here? Maybe I could grab a coffee with him. So that's how it happened. Mm-hmm. So we met up, not really knowing each other. It was sort of this awkward meeting in a hotel coffee bar, and neither of us really knowing what to talk about, and then realised that we had exactly the same birthday of the same year, pretty much within the same hour as each other.
There you go.
And then we were off, you know.
Yeah.
But I think I met Steve at that time feeling quite directionless. Mm-hmm. I didn't really know what I was going to write next, or if I was going to write something. I was at that phase in my life, I think I was moving into my 50s, where I think we all naturally just look at what time have I got left? Do I really want to just keep doing this, or could I be doing something else? So we talked about all of that, really. I think he could see how I felt quite trapped in my thinking. My mind had sort of trapped me into thinking that I had to write songs, make albums and go on tour. And I kind of got in that loop. And he just reminded me that I was an artist that loved words, music and images. And just think about those three things. You've got words, you've got music, you've got images. What can you make out of that? Mm-hmm. And stop putting a framework around it. It doesn't have to be anything. And I realised that that's actually the way he conducts his lifestyle as a creative artist. Because he's making a film, then he's making a sculpture, then he's creating some short film in an art gallery. You know, he just follows his instinct of what he needs to make at that moment with the things that he loves. And so that's what I learned from him, and it was I just never forgot it.
It's interesting how, you know, even someone who, like your artistic practices incorporated many different things from the beginning.
Yeah, I think
you can get stuck in a loop.
Yeah,
it's quite good to hear that.
For John and Flo, who both work in soundtrack as well, so they're often working with images.
Yeah.
But I think, like me, they just submerge themselves in art, in film. It's because it feeds that creative part of you. And you can't really separate them very easily, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was reading somewhere, it's 7 years it's been since your last album. And I was thinking how brilliant that is, because nobody gets a chance to have 7 years to go through whatever it is in life that one needs to, so that you have the opportunity to, you know, produce great art.
That's right, and there's a privilege to that. We were just talking about it actually while listening to that track, and that sense that, you know, we were saying it's the 7th album, I think, for the three of you together over many other projects and other adventures. But that idea that you have perspective, that's only something that can come to you with time. And while there are challenges to that, you always want to be trying to cover new ground and try new things, you also have the privilege of looking back and listening to yourself change. I mean, I wonder what that's like for you.
It's wonderful, really. I've always just had such a strong desire to learn new things and discover new ground. So, and I think we're all like that. None of us are interested in doing something we've done before, even if it was great. But we're just not interested in doing it again, because it's more about what else can we uncover whilst we're alive on this earth, because that's really exciting. And I think that's also what unites us, is because we're all on that wavelength, all wanting that. So that's what makes it easy. And it also makes it easy that when we're working together, if any of us spot something we feel is a bit similar to something we've done before, then we don't do it, and we do something else.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that actually, because, you know, all three of you have been cited by so many as inspirations. I mean, Polly, I was reading recently, St Vincent has talked about how inspirational you've been to her throughout your career, and I was wondering, is there anybody from whatever discipline that you kind of return to when you need to have your kind of creativity, your inspiration refreshed, or just to get out of your own head and lose yourself in something else?
Obviously, I met John when I was really young.
18 or something?
Maybe 17 even.
Yeah.
But John was a hero of mine. Like, because, you know, down in the Dorset Wilds in the middle of nowhere. There weren't that many bands, and John's band used to come down from Bristol, which seemed so exotic.
The big city.
And he played in these clubs in Sherborne, this place called the Electric Broom Cupboard. And I'd go and watch his band, and he was a hero to me. He was like my David Bowie, you know, and I loved watching him perform. He was so unusual. He had this 3-piece band, 2 percussionists and a bass, and everyone singing really complicated harmonies, all on headset mics, and John sort of leaning out over the audience like a preacher or something. It was kind of terrifying but really exciting and very challenging lyrics. So John was that for me, and Flood was, because when I first started hearing Flood's recording, when I first started noticing these records that I loved and looking on the back and it kept saying
Same
recorded
guy.
by Flood,
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh my God, I want to work with this person called Flood. So it was them for me, because they're a little bit older than me, I have to say. So that was the people that I looked up to, yeah.
And the flip side of that is there are so many occasions on this new record where I might be holding a microphone for Polly to sing, and the hairs on the back of my neck go up, and I just go, I am working with true art and artistry.
Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. It really is. It's pure magic, and it's wonderful to have you here to talk about it. PJ Harvey, Flood and John Parrish, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Thank you.